Is it recording now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what see the red icon at the top right?
Alright. For the bloopers.
That's right.
Oh. Welcome to Peace of Mind. Peace of Mind?
Peace of Mind. That's right. This is the in-person episode.
Yeah. Finally we have...
3 of us here. We've got the Buddha, a special guest.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, Dharma Sense couldn't make it out. He's not feeling well today. Which is unfortunate because today's topic he has a lot of background knowledge about, and he's concerned about it as well. And yeah, eventually we'll have like a follow-up to this episode, which is about the Israel and Palestine conflict, but also, and that also includes Iran today. Yeah,
so like Pete said, we're going to talk about the Israel-Palestine situation right now. We're a little bit over a year of the October 6th attack.
Yeah.
We're a little bit over 1 year now, and so we figured this would be something good for us to talk about. We haven't talked about it yet on the channel, but we want to make it known, things that we can do to facilitate peace, things that we think would help in the world, and first thing I think would just be to generate a discussion about this kind of thing, getting people to realize that there is suffering in the world and we don't have to be complacent and turn a blind eye to things. Yeah. So we want to start a bigger discussion about Israel and Palestine and see what can we really do to help.
Right, and again, like as I have expressed before, I like that phrase, we're all in this together, right? Mm-hmm. Like to sort of give a disclaimer and a preface, I think that it's important to understand where we're coming from, because whenever you talk about Israel and Palestine, oftentimes people think you have to take one side or the other.
That's right, yeah.
Right, and as Buddhists, and just as engaged Buddhists and where we are in our lives, for one, my concern always started with the plight of the Jewish people. Anti-Semitism is definitely a thing that we do not condone, and we think that it is absolutely anathema to promoting a peaceful society.
Of course.
And on the flip side, we also recognize the humanity and the sort of like just the right to life and liberty of the Palestinian people. So we're in solidarity of both sides, as it were.
Yeah, so there's, and especially Thich and Hanh talks about not picking sides. Mm-hmm. And so you think, well, how can you do that? There's two sides fighting each other, how can you not pick? Well, I guess if we really had to pick a side, it would be the side of humanity.
Right.
We really want a ceasefire, first of all, is no more suffering, no more needless killing of innocent people. And so I don't think it's helpful for us to be like, oh, Israel, we support them or we support Palestine. What I support is peace in the world, and I think that if we can work more towards unity and less towards, oh, I'm going to pick this side, and then the other people are bad, and we hate them. Because I think that just creates more conflict. Absolutely. And don't we want to kind of solve that,
Yes, indeed. And like speaking from my own lived experience, being in war and in conflict, especially involving, Islamic people or people of the Middle Eastern cut of the world, I think that it's very important from my experience to impress upon people that war is wrong. And it also, when it involves people in those regions that have been war-torn for so long, it is deeply traumatic, and it has, from the Buddhist perspective, it has tremendous karmic results.
Yeah, it's pretty awful what's going on. I heard, it might have been a couple months ago at this point, but still, I heard in a news story that there was a bombing from a attack on Palestine. Yeah. Where Israel had basically designated humanitarian aid and basically no conflict zone, said, oh, go there, you'll be safe. Yeah. And then they started dropping bombs on this place, and 90 people died, and there were children there, and they were just refugees trying to make it out of war, basically, and then they get bombed on. It's like, that's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
The situation is really pretty serious out there.
It's unconscionable to me because when I was in the Army, we had rules of engagement that was extended from the Geneva Conventions, and so we all had like a Geneva Conventions card in our rules of engagement, and those particular efforts from Israel and IDF, primarily Israel Defense Force, those actions are unconscionable from my perspective. Like if my unit were to do something like that, we would all be tried in a tribunal.
Yeah,
like
right.
It would be
really bad, right?
It would be very bad for us.
Exactly. But it goes to show how like intense the situation is out there. Is that they're so angry and so fueled by hatred and fear and all these things that they're willing to like basically bomb innocent people just at a shot to get this. I think it was a commander.
Yes.
On the Palestinian force.
Yeah.
Just to get one guy, and they were willing to take out all these innocent people.
And it just is not a good method of going about getting your way. You know, like it isn't. So we absolutely stand opposed to that sort of behavior.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. And
when anytime a situation like this happens where innocent people are dying, when they just want to be free from conflict, it's like, oh man, like it sucks so bad because like I feel like we should make an effort to help, you know.
Yes.
And it's very difficult right now because Israel is putting basically a blockade around Gaza, preventing humanitarian aid, and it's like, what do we do?
And it's one of the most, I think it is, UN said that it's the most protracted event of displaced humans in modern history, right? So it's post World War II, that the plight of Palestinians is so prolonged and so protracted. We're talking about generations of people who have not had a place of shelter, a place to call home. And then, you know, on the flip side, you know, it's kind of, to me, it rings hollow that the Israeli people would, you know, it's not all Israeli people, but the regime would visit this on them, when to me it's like they're the people, if anyone, who should understand this the most. That, you know.
Yeah, isn't that a little bit ironic? It's because they're the only Jewish state surrounded by all these Islamic states, and they're constantly, you know, fearing from attacks from Iran and all kinds of foreign entities, and now they're kind of doing exactly the thing that they're trying to stop. You know, it's very like, what? You know?
Yeah,
but I guess that goes to show that it's the continuation of fear and anger and violence. It's just being kind of ingrained in that area right now.
Yeah, and also I want to cite Noam Chomsky, who, you know, is a popular like social commentator and a peace activist actually. And I think that people might not know that about him, but he has said that part of the consciousness of the Israelis in the state of Israel is born from the United States, from the so-called Anglophone world, where, you know, because Israel was essentially where they are now, how they were formulated as a state was a post-war solution to the so-called Jewish problem and the Jewish diaspora. Israelis deserve a place to live that they can call home. But what had happened was that their move towards Palestine and their sort of occupation there was essentially informed by the Anglophone world, meaning like the Americans, Canadians, former British territories. So there's that sort of post-colonial critique, or that indigenous people critique of like, well, if this is the civilization that informed Israel on how to formulate their state. And so Chomsky is saying that was a way that essentially that's the mindset of the state of Israel, that this is a territory, this is a place that we want to colonize and call our own.
So do you think that Israel perceives it as being like, it's our land and we want it back, basically?
Absolutely, yes.
So they have this mindset of like, this is ours, it's our territory, it's our holy lands, and so we want to maintain control over it, basically. Right,
and there's almost like a kind of vengeful bent to it too. There was like the Yom Kippur Wars, and there were other various wars that of let's say assault from the Arabic states like Transjordan, Egypt, and you know, even Iran had played a role there, where they were trying to push Israel out of Palestine very aggressively. And so Israel basically structured themselves around reactionary assaults like that. And then, you know, the UN put peacekeeping operations in the early formulation of the state. There was an assault on Muslims in their own territory and their own sovereign, and that kind of is very it's relevant today with what's happening in Iran today.
Yeah, they have a pretty long history around like anger and a lot of conflict. Not always necessarily military conflict, but definitely in this case today it is, unfortunately. And so it's a pretty complicated situation.
Right.
Between Israel, but I mean, what do you think we can do about this though? Like, is there any way we can help? Any way our viewers can get involved?
I actually thought long and hard about this yesterday and today, because I was like, what could we actually say and do to sort of, alleviate this suffering, First of all, is to kind of bring attention and awareness to the unilateral nature of how Israel's been behaving. Now, again, I'm only drawing attention to Israel right now just because of what has transpired. There's been an attack, an assault on the Jewish people in the state of Israel that was targeted and was heartfelt. Like, we definitely care about the plight of the Israelis as well, and Jewish people at large, like everywhere around the world. But since then, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, has declared war on these type of people, these factions like Hezbollah and Hamas. But then that declaration of war really entails the wholesale targeting of those territories, unilateral strikes, and then it's escalated into strikes in Jordan, into Iran. So what I think that one of the things we can do is really bring attention to the unilateral nature of these assaults and these strikes. That's the failure of Netanyahu's regime, Netanyahu's administration. He's been at the core of all these attacks. And he himself has visited locations in Gaza, for example, where the IDF is occupied and has caused tremendous suffering. So, I think that much can be done from just addressing the fact that a lot of this is ego-driven. It's also narrative-driven. In the same way that the Third Reich and Nazism was ego and narrative-driven.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's also fueled by a lot of anger too, because he had said that whatever they do to us, we're gonna get them back 50 or 100 times or whatever it is he said. Yes. And it's people say, when out for revenge, you better dig 2 graves. Something like that. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of what's going on now. It's the more conflict you perpetuate, the more. They're not just going to sit there and let you kill them, right? They're going to fight back, and so you will see casualties on your own side too, right?
Right.
So it's a lose-lose situation. The only way we can really facilitate peace is by helping to de-radicalize that mindset of we need to kill people.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And so once we can help kind of diffuse that and facilitate less aggression and less revenge and anger, I think the situation could become better. But I mean, easier said than done. That's a really complicated thing that we're talking about. You know?
Yeah. From experience, I know that basically the greatest force multiplication for terrorism and insurgency is to kill people and then allow generations of kids to grow up in that environment, in that situation of just destitution. I've seen some recent footage of what's happening in Gaza. And it was very harrowing to see the most of the victims that you see on footage, though some of it is a little bit skewed by by the Gazans. I know that they want to showcase the suffering of their children,
right?
But at the same time, I feel the reason why they would do that. I as a teacher and a protector of children myself, that is unconscionable to me. Just that, and again, having experience in war and theater, it's something you never want to see and be a part of.
Right, not the musical kind, musical kind of theater.
Right. No, I'm talking. Right.
The bad kind of theater.
Yeah, we call being at war theater, the actual. And that kind of brings some wisdom to it, actually, what you're saying, that play on words, because the terminology we use is almost, sometimes it's euphemistic, and it doesn't really, it kind of brings to mind something other than what's actually happening on the ground.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, like this is the theater in which we are engaging at war. But in actuality, it's very palpable and very real. It's very visceral. Yeah, so...
right, like that juxtaposition of like what's being said versus like the experience of being there.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully I've never, being an American in a time of relative peace here, haven't been exposed to anything like that, thank God. I wish that everyone in the world could live without fearing for their lives like this. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, and like, you know, coming back from Iraq and experiencing war like that, I had tremendous, and I still do have some survivor's guilt, because, and it's not, sometimes it was related to my friends being, you know, they had to pay the ultimate price in war, but also being witness to like the children and families being displaced and harmed.
Like seeing all of the suffering happening and being like, oh man,
and I'm like,
I'm here, you know?
I wish I could bring them back with me, and you know, but it's just not possible, right? And so instead, I was like, you know, as you know, anybody like who's like in this fold, we're like, well, let's call for peace in those regions. Let's try, you know, peace in the Middle East, as it were. And again, that the euphemisms and the repetition of these sayings and stuff, it cheapens and robs the true message and essence of it all, of its flavor and its content, right?
Like I said, it's complicated. Like they're both territories that want to like live there and exist there and like occupy a certain amount of territory. So they can't just like leave and go somewhere else, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, the refugees are like, I'm out of here, right? Let's go find somewhere so that our children aren't dying.
Right.
But then it's like, once you leave, where do you go then? You're leaving your home and your livelihood, and then like you don't have any way to have your basic needs met. And then like Egypt is like, oh, I'm not going to take you or whatever, right? And so where do you go, you know?
And it's another thing to be mindful of what's different between now and during like World War II era and stuff. There was a lot of reporting back then, but it was like you had to go to the actual theater, like the movie theater, to see the newsreels of what was happening. And sometimes you would see the newspaper, but again, that's like 3 steps away from what's actually happening. And nowadays, you know, everybody's plugged in. So like the immensity of Gaza, for example, the whole Muslim world is privy and is being updated constantly to what's happening. So the sort of the propaganda is being done for them to where they can see what's actually happening. They don't need to look anywhere else. For us who are concerned about this, it's not doing us any favors. It's not doing the Jewish people any favors. This sort of immensity of humanitarian crises being broadcast in real time. You know,
I'm sure that doesn't help the situation for Israel. You know, being that the Muslim communities might see that and get angry and then want to. You know, inflict more violence, and then the cycle just kind of continues. It
just continues, and you know, and as Buddhists, we're very much concerned about that, right?
Breaking out of the cycle.
Yes, and maybe we should do showcase or show a clip of our pillars. It says, you know,
hatred does not cease by hatred, only by love.
Yeah.
This is the law eternal.
Well,
I'm gonna put a picture of that up here so that we
give that a blink on that one.
It's just the wrong camera, man. You know what I mean?
It's the one law that's eternal, apparently, in Buddhism. So, but yeah, it's true, right? Like it's absolutely
right. True. Yeah, exactly. You're never gonna solve the problem and lessen suffering by being a hateful, angry, violent person.
Absolutely.
It's not gonna happen. You have to be the bigger person and just say, you know what? I just want to do the greater good and just end it.
Right, and it's like, you know, we get into these situations where everybody can understand, like sometimes you're in the middle of an argument and like, you know what I mean? Like you get into an argument with someone and you insist that you're right, but then there comes a point to where you realize more damage is done just by insisting that you're right. And it just, you know what I mean? The back and forth continues.
That's right.
And then you finally realize, oh, I'm just causing more harm than...
It doesn't really matter if I'm right anyway.
Right,
All
yes.
I get is like a temporary egotistical satisfaction that goes away once I realize how much harm I've caused.
Right.
And then if you are, this is why mindfulness is so great, right? If you can recognize that while it's happening and go, oh, wait a minute, I need to chill out.
Yeah.
Then you might not cause as much harm.
You know, in Islam, it says, you know, to kill a man is to kill every man. And, you know, Judaism, that we actually get a lot of our proverbs from Judaism about peace, you know, and...
just unfortunate that it doesn't seem to be as peaceful nowadays. Basically, the main thing we want to do is to get people involved with our discussion and say, hey, like, we want peace, and we want it now, and we want a ceasefire, and we want less suffering in the world.
Yes,
and
ceasefire.
To facilitate a wholesome, good mindset.
Yeah, and with the ceasefire now, the whole attack on Iran, that unilateral strike, I think that the UN should get involved. That is definitely one, we should probably call for the UN to get involved for peacekeeping operations. That it's definitely a violation of international law, and you know, we want to, it can escalate to war. It's very
you know, I mean, a lot of the things that Israel is doing in Palestine would probably be called a crime against humanity. You know. So I mean, maybe it would be helpful for the UN to get involved, but it's kind of sticky. It's like, what do we do? Because we can't be malicious about it, because then it just, you know, things really get crazy then, right? So we can't do it in a way that's malicious and without choosing a side, because then there's more aggression directed back. You know what I mean? So it's a touchy situation, but I think there's something we should do to help, you know?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. So solidarity for both the Jewish people and to the Arab people as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dear YouTube Sangha, thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah, if you made it this far, sadhu to you.
Sadhu.